Depression as a Health Issue in New Zealand, presented by Hayley Carter, Lois Nicol, and Daniel Nicol. Our presentation will be broken into three parts. So depression and our definition of depression as an adolescent health issue in New Zealand, public health and how it intersects with education of depression in schools, and finally with our interactive task. The definition of depression. Adolescence is described as a period between childhood and adulthood. This can be measured through physical, psychological, social, and mental changes to a body. During this stage of development, young people tend to question their identity and their understanding of well-being. Unfortunately, there is little research which investigates young people's understanding of well-being, which can be seen as being ironic since societal views are that young people should have a clear understanding on their personal well-being and are pressured to solve and manage any issues in relation to their health. This relates to the underlying assumptions of society. These are ideas that we can all experience a level of good health. We all have the ability to reach out for healthier lifestyle changes, but not everyone chooses to be healthy. Health is for all, not just people who experience inequality. This is essential to understand as we can also assess how our health issue is portrayed from a societal view. There are also many determinants that bring together well-being. In New Zealand, developing knowledge around a model like Te Whare Tapawha can help broaden an individual's idealism on health. Depression.org describes this model and also talks about the influences of negative experiences through our mental aspect, hiniaro. In terms of our presentation today, our resolve is to investigate mental health and one of its issues. Our health issue that we'll be presenting is a broad term, depression. We hope to really break this term down and understand its influence on adolescents in Aotearoa. A simplistic definition of depression is depression, major depressive disorder, is a common and serious medical illness and negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. Psychiatry.org. Psychiatry.org and McGill 2007 both describe depression as having negative impacts on both emotional and physical health. They both also explain how depression negatively impacts growth and development within adolescence and the many influences which can lead to depression.
Depression is an adolescent health issue because of its crippling effects on those affected by it in society. Depression is the outcome of various factors that can be detrimental to one's well-being. It is a diverse topic to explore as the outcome of depression will vary from person to person, as different values influence different reactions to certain situations. Bronfenbrenner's ecological model of development illustrates this idea perfectly, in the sense that it shows the individual in the center, influenced by the various systems that surround them. These systems include the microsystem, the mesosystem, exosystem, and macrosystem. The model is an interrelatable system that shows how various aspects of life can influence one another. Depression works around this model as individuals that may feel distress in one aspect of their life usually influence their well-being of another system. McLaren, Resnick, Harris, and Blunt state that caring and supportive families are important for young people. Young people that report having caring and supportive family relationships are happier, healthier, and get on better in their lives. A lot of depression can be a direct link to family support and love, where families can make an adolescent feel supported and motivated, or feel excluded and ignored. The feelings of depression can relate directly to the determinants of health, which look at health as a complex phenomenon that can be approached from many angles. The determinants of health look at different influences of one's health, which can include stress, social exclusion, and unemployment or employment. The determinants of health show the various links that can contribute to one's well-being, which can affect an individual's mental state of mind. Depression can be a cause of different determinants of health being influenced negatively, such as job loss or a breakdown in family relationships. It is an important adolescent health issue in New Zealand, as it is stated by Rebecca Granger that 1 in 6 New Zealanders will experience severe depression in their lifetime. Depression is a mental state of unwellness that leads to negative thinking and a change in behavioral patterns. For young adolescents, depression is an important topic to delve into, as it is sometimes uncharted territory to talk about. It can be avoided in dialogue, as many outcomes of depression, such as suicide, are too sensitive to talk about. Adolescent people can be impacted by depressive symptoms as they learn to grow up in a world trying to find their own identity while also being compared to others. It is something that over time has not changed, as the Youth 2000 and 2012 survey results state that there is little to no improvement in the signs of depressive symptoms for students surveyed. In a separate survey conducted for alternative education students, 22% of students indicated a high likelihood of significant psychopathology from depression. A multivariate analysis demonstrated that family and peer connections were protective against depression. These results are based off of surveys throughout New Zealand, which may not be an accurate representation of society, but indicate the areas of concern that surround depression in our country.
What is public health? Public health, as described by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Foundation, as the science of protecting and improving the health of people and their communities. This was created through the promotion of healthy lifestyles and research into preventing and treating illness/injury. The overall view is protecting health for all of the population. The public health sector creates a lot of underlying assumptions in regards to health. As explained previously, the first is health is for all. So attaining a healthy lifestyle for all people in the population, not just for specific individuals or those who experience. And stated for the second is for the greater good, for society and societal benefit. This surrounds the ideas that healthy individuals are the only people who are beneficial for society. The third is the idea that people choose to be healthy. If an individual is unhealthy, then it's the result from unhealthy choices that they have made. We must understand that the public health sector was set out by the government, but also establish ideas around why the government ensures good health for its people. Governments must provide conditions in which good health can be attained. They do this through many agendas in which can prevent or solve health issues. Governments use ideas like biopower and biopolitics to create social norms and expectations for society to compare themselves with. Within this lies the issue, as health agendas are created from questionable social norms, but are then intersected to create the foundation for health educators, promoters in those specific health areas. These ideas form our pedagogical health work. This is a term in which is described as the way we think, the knowledge that forms our attitudes and beliefs, and how this is reproduced in our teaching. As health educators, we're exposed to a public health view. Our pedagogical health work is what we embody and then what we pass on.
The public health sector are the only people who currently discuss the youth health problem of depression. They are the ones who create prevention and rehabilitation programs, employ psychiatrists, and other programs where people are able to get help. The health education sector, however, have not much room to educate about depression. The sensitive nature of the issue means it is not discussed openly in schools. In turn, this gives more power to the medical field, which is run by the public health sector. On the Ministry of Education TKI website, there are the New Zealand curriculum outlines surrounding what is taught in health and physical education classes. The Ministry of Education's definition of mental health is, at the personal level, mental health refers to the quality of a person's psychological, social, and behavioural functioning in the world. This portrays mental health as a broad area influenced by diverse factors, just like how depression is viewed. Throughout the learning outcomes on the mental health education, there is no use of the words depression or suicide. However, they use the word risk management. The Ministry of Education have a big focus on using haora and the four main aspects and applying them to people's health. The focus on haora relates to the mental health education and the mental aspects of one's health. The Ministry of Education requires students to have a range of learning opportunities in mental health. An example of one of these opportunities from the Ministry of Education is developing knowledge, understanding, and skills to support themselves and other people during times of stress, disappointment, and loss, for example, when expressing their own ideas and feelings and listening to those of other people, managing change, implementing practical strategies for supporting themselves and other people, accessing support, and understanding cultural differences associated with loss and grief. This statement relates to one of the areas for action of the Ottawa Charter. The 5 areas for action are develop personal skills, create supportive environments, build health policy, strengthen community action, and reorientate health services. Developing personal skills is self-explanatory. And the Ministry of Education is trying to develop knowledge, understanding, and skills to support themselves through the education of mental health in schools. The Ottawa Charter is a health model recognised by the Ministry of Health. The Ottawa Charter is aimed at health promotion. The World Health Organization defines health promotion as the process of enabling people to increase control and to improve their health. It has 5 main areas for action and 3 action areas.
An example of the public health sector intersecting health education is the use of social and mass media. On depression.org.nz, Sir John Kirwan is the first face you see. Being the spokesman for depression in New Zealand is a big deal. He's well known, and being an ex-All Black, stereotypically he should be tough and manly. Having such a bloke as an image for depression in New Zealand, it is very powerful for everyone. He recently started his own foundation called the Sir John Kirwan Foundation, and is also looking into starting a program within schools that teaches people around every aspect of mental health, so they have the IQ, understanding, then if something happens to them or someone close to them, then they have the EQ, equipment, to deal with it. Kirwan is doing a lot for the Mental Health Foundation in terms of the creation of programs for schools and the workplace, and is working on a wellness hub so people can go get the advice and support they need, so their first interaction with the mental health services isn't a negative. Kirwan demonstrates the importance of teaching for health outcomes rather than just filling minds with knowledge. He is quoted saying, "My goal is to put a fence at the top of a cliff, not an ambulance at the bottom." This represents his ambitions to limit the impacts depression can have on society, preventing issues from evolving rather than sorting out problems once they have been raised. On newspaper articles that talk about sensitive issues such as depression, stress, suicide, the headlines are quick to let the readers know that it contains sensitive content that could trigger individuals. With the New Zealand Herald and stuff.co.nz, they end these sorts of articles with places to get help. They link many depression and suicide phone lines, youth and kids phone lines, and links to websites for help. Another aspect of the public health sector intersecting health education is the use of websites and phone and text lines for help. For example, Youthline, Kidsline, Depression.org, Suicide Crisis Helplines, and Lifeline are all places where you can get information and help on issues such as alcohol abuse, depression, stress, and suicide risk. They are informational platforms where you can talk to real-life people over the phone or even through text if you need to.
Schools play a huge part in how depression can be looked at and dealt with for those influenced by it. Schools are important for the health and well-being of young people. Bernack and Resnick stated that effective learning environments, adults having high expectations of students, adults providing appropriate caring relationships with students, safe school environments and opportunities for meaningful participation in school life are important factors for positive well-being. I have 3 separate examples to look into about how depression was taught in schools. For religious education, the idea of depression was something that was sometimes frowned upon. A strong belief of God's plan was instilled in our minds, which made us look away from depressive symptoms as problems in our lives, as the idea of prayer can limit any negative thoughts that may have come into our minds. I was taught in high school to stay positive even when it felt like my life was falling apart. This made learning about depression, its signs and emergent patterns, difficult, as it was something we should never have in our state of minds. A separate example is something that I had with my student counsellor. Our school policy was about creating supportive environments to enable a free, open opportunity to express concerns with a professional for help. When my school caught wind of issues I had at home, I was called to see the counsellor to ask how the issues were affecting me. This was a good policy as it gave me the opportunity to minimize damage that could have been caused by a broken microsystem or prevent any negative thoughts I may have been developing in relation to my problems at home. Another example in my high school was how my PE class influenced mental health and led to depressive symptoms. Health for us in PE was defined as good physical conditioning, with body image and weight at the forefront. It led to many students in class to feel excluded and different as they didn't fit the so-called societal norm. My teachers viewed health as a normalized view in which they took for granted any ideas of health as a holistic concept because it didn't align with what they already knew. Their ideas related to healthism as their view was a westernized view of the world being taught to our students. It had negative implications on the mental well-being of students, as many students were disinterested in PE as a result of our teachers. It made me see that health and the ideas of depression were taught with the idea of individualism. The idea of individualism explores how health is of the responsibility of the individual. It contradicts the ideas of depression, as depression is not a state of mind that can't be dealt with alone. Depression is a mental state that can be influenced by outside help, and it is something that requires everyone around the person and the different systems that influence them to help them get out of the hole that they're in.
Information about helplines, like Kidsline, Youthline, and suicide helplines, have a presence in schools but need to be implemented into health classes in Year 9 and Year 10 when health is compulsory. An example I have while at school was the exposure to Kidsline. My friends started volunteering for them while we were in Year 13 and started to promote them at our high school. We were taught about depression but not ways to get help and how to deal with it. During my time at high school, 2 students committed suicide within a year. This prompted a change in the school, where depression and mental health issues were talked about and discussed more openly between students and some teachers. The school counsellors were trying to call people into their room earlier to try and prevent anything from happening. Teachers formed relationships with students that were genuine and tried to provide a safe space for students to talk to them if they had no one else they could trust.
Our interactive task. Our first task is to break down the difference between education about health and for health. Educating for health or health promotion is defined by popline.org as a process of enabling people to increase control over and to improve their health. Simply put, it is doing something with our health knowledge to attain health outcomes. About health or health education seeks to improve or protect health through voluntary changes in behavior. As a consequence of learning opportunities, it can include personal education and development and mass media information and education. ResearchGate.net describes education as giving people information to make their own choices, helping them learn about the health issue. Our task that we are presenting today is to adapt education about health through depression. Our task will also incorporate a pedagogical intent and also learning as a health process. This is an understanding that health is a continuous learning process. ResearchGate.net also states that instead of health and health education being focused on the prevention of diseases and health-related issues, health should be approached as a set of resources and dynamic processes, rather than the end product. The article also breaks down this idea by explaining that New Zealand's health sector has moved into a position where learning as a health process is being utilised within the school curriculum when teaching about health. So health should be looked at from adolescence as a practice and not just an outcome.
For our interactive task, we will be taking an idea from the movie Freedom Riders. We will get the students to stand on either side of the classroom and place a line down the middle of the classroom. We will fire questions at the students, and if the question applies to them, then they will stand on the line. We thought we could incorporate the idea that depression is a topic in which has an effect on many people. We will also be giving them information about depression as the task carries on. This task is not only to educate about depression, but also gives students a platform in which they can express their notions of depression, whilst also showing them that there are others out there experiencing the same issues.
Okay, kia ora everyone. So my name is Daniel, and as you can see, we've given your classroom a bit of a makeover, and you're probably wondering what the line in the middle of the ground here is for. Our task is going to be really simple. So between myself, I'll ask you a various of questions, and if the answer is yes, or the answer applies to you, then I just want you to step forward to the light. Just an example, I'll ask you guys a quick question now. So, okay guys, who wore undies to school today? So, yeah, I'm kind of hoping you all said yes. So that's exactly how. So, has anyone heard of the term depression? Do you guys have like a simple explanation or definition of what you guys think depression is?
So at this part, I've asked them a definition of depression. What we would do in a real life situation is then, after their explanation, we would give them a definition of our own definition of depression to further gain their knowledge that they already have on depression.
Do you guys know, where do you hear about the term depression? Where is it? Is it in the media? Do you guys hear it from your friends? Are there Any of your
Yeah,
answers?
mainly like and like the depression ads as well, like depression.org, like their website, and sort of in school.
Yeah, in
Like,
schools.
Not like it wasn't like a major, like from my experience, like it wasn't like a major thing that people talked about.
It was,
Like regarding health.
it was always definitely highlighted when suicide would happen, and whether depression had anything to do with it. Other than that, it would just be like government initiatives or other organizations like Attitude coming into schools to talk about it.
Okay, thanks guys. You can step away from the line.
This is the point where health educators would give statistics surrounding depression. For example, 1 in 6 people suffer from depression or experience depression at some point in their life.
Would any of you guys like to share your experiences of like those people in your life that had depression, like what behavior changes that you saw in them? Or does anyone know the effects of depression? So the effects that can have on you physically or mentally, the effects that can have on your family or friends, just, you know, the effects and causes of depression. Okay. Does anyone want to, explain what the effects are or what they think the effects are?
This is where we would explain depression through a health perspective. This would mean explaining the effects of depression on yourself, friends and family, community, and the society. We would also explain depression through ethics, biomedical views, and sociology.
Like in a physical way, like my experience with depression was we had a friend and they were real fit and real healthy, real sporty, and then they would never come to school, they would never go out, we'd never see them, and then when we did, we noticed that they were getting a little bit bigger, and we thought, well, that's not normal for that person, like, because they were always so healthy, so fit. And then when we started to talk to him about what was going on, and when he actually opened up, we realized that he turned to food as a coping mechanism, as a comfort for what he was going through. It was somewhere he could just go and escape everything. So I think, yeah, in a physical aspect, in my own opinion, or not opinion, experience, yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, that was.
Okay, thank you guys. Does anyone know, like, for example, the number for Kids Line? Does anyone know the number of, have heard of Kids Line before? So does anyone have any questions that they want to ask about today's class, or anything you've learned today that you want to make a comment on? So our goal today was to talk about a topic in which is very sensitive and something not discussed in our country, right? So as you guys are aware, depression can feel like a dark tunnel in which it needs many people to guide you back to the light. So we wanted depression to be talked about for people to stand up and to be the generation of heroes to those who really need them. John Kerwin, I'll end on a quote by John Kerwin, who is a famous All Black, and he is a big ambassador for fighting depression. His quote states, "My goal is to put a fence at the top of the cliff, not an ambulance at the bottom." So thank you guys for having us.